Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Ramsey, your host for the Empire Life podcast, and welcome today. We interview female founders from all around the world about their rise to success and giving you lifelong strategies to use absolutely today to enhance your life and your business. And Empire Life is a mentoring and coaching company that serves and guides female founders in scaling their online empires. And today we are with Brooke Dunwell. She is in the business of recruiting for startups, and she can also serve her team and her can serve as HR for startups. And they also have newly built, and that's going to be launching soon, interview and resume coaching, and also a recruiting online course. And I'll hand it over to Brooke to fill in any gaps that I might have missed.
Sure. So yes, I'm the founder of Carbon 3 Recruiting, and we, as you mentioned, we recruit for established startups that are ready to scale. And those are throughout the US and international, and we help build their teams to succeed, right? So that's our main thing. And then in addition to that, we also have the Wild Feather podcast, which the podcast is focused on inspiring and impacting, supporting others through the journeys of female founders and investors. And that is more of a passion project, but there are goals to grow that time uh, as time passes, or as we make time to focus on that. But that's super exciting, and it's a ton of fun. We interview entrepreneurs of all stages of startups and investors, and they're in every type of different company, from bags to food to software companies. It's super cool. And then, as you mentioned, we also are getting ready to launch the interview and resume coaching, just to help people out in going from the big resignation to getting hired. There are so many jobs out there, and not enough people at this point. So helping them to navigate that, and in addition, launching methods recruiting course to teach people how to be successful recruiters. So lots going on, but super fun.
Definitely. I have a quick question for you that's actually not on the questions, a little bit off the cuff. Right now, with the big resignation that's going on, we're still in the big C, or in COVID, or hopefully at the tail end, still in the midst of this as we're recording this podcast in 2022, or at the beginning of 2022. And with the big resignation, I can't even say that, resignation, that are employers, do you think that they're lowering their standards a little bit, or do they absolutely still have the same expectations and standards, even though there's not enough people to fill these slots?
Yes. I think that they're just as picky as they ever have been. And there are a few things going on here. So one is, it's extremely competitive for those who do want to work. They usually have multiple offers going on. So it's very competitive from a company standpoint and hiring. Comp expectations have gone up pretty much across the board. So I would say they've increased, at least from a candidate's perspective, 10 to 20 plus percent, at minimum, I would say, sometimes even more. And I guess I can't speak from larger companies or mid-sized companies, because I don't know if they're lowering their bar to get people hired. Because at what point in time, you got to ask yourself, at what point in time are you losing money not having somebody in that seat that could learn the skills, right? From a startup perspective, they can't afford to make a bed hire, and due to COVID, and whether if they're running lean, then they need people to hit the ground running once they start. And so the training curve, especially from a remote standpoint, training curve is usually pretty narrow. So startups haven't lowered their bar. They've probably increased their bar a bit because they need people to execute immediately. And they just don't have the, 90 to 120 day training leeway that
The
maybe a
leeway.
larger
So
company has. You know what I
therefore,
mean?
they would want someone who was more of an expert or maybe more senior at what they're wanting them to
Mhm.
execute right away. But then the flip side of that, from coming out of software, I still have a lot of networking people in my network who were in software that are looking for new positions, or I get emails every day from recruiters
Mhm.
as well, or from Meta, even, or Facebook.
Yeah.
And it seems on the flip side of that, then the candidates are thinking, well, I have these multiple offers and I have this influx of all these interviews and interest. I can ask for more, even if they're not quite senior yet. It's an interesting dichotomy going on right now
Right. It's
from
very
both
interesting.
sides.
Yeah. And I would say some companies call people out on it. Like, I just had a situation last week where the guy said he wanted like top of the range, somebody with like 12 years experience, and he really wanted the job. And they said, your comp requirements don't match your skill set. So we have to pass. And that is a pretty stringent company. Like they know exactly what they want, and they're very frugal with their money, shall we say. But I think we're going to see more and more of that happening as well, when it comes to developers versus, because that's something that can be measured versus like a salesperson, say, it's a different situation. So, like, you can do a coding test and see the level of skill set in a coding test per se, depending on the
True.
kind,
Hmm.
versus a salesperson taking a personality assessment or something. It's not the same, right?
It's not the
So,
same. Maybe the
right,
salesperson has to show their numbers from a previous
right,
company, or
right.
show the turnaround or the targets.
You can sniff stuff out. Uh,
Hmm.
you just can't. I mean, then there are laws now where you can't ask for W-2s and you can't verify. Um, you can't ask what they made last year. So there are a lot of different dynamics that are included in it. But and the other interesting shift when it comes to developers and engineers is that prior to COVID, I think the majority of them went to an office,
Hmm.
unless you were a remote employee or a contract employee, etc. And so COVID gave them all the little taste of not wanting to go into the office. Now suddenly they could do their job remote. And some companies have remained remote, but some have uh, returned to the office. And so I would say a very big shift for, so I see it the most in software engineers,
Hmm.
is that they all require or want remote work now versus before.
Yes. Everyone in my
They
network,
prefer.
it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah,
Like that,
yeah,
that's it. Like it's not even negotiable. And
right. Yep. So there, it really just depends on the company and the dynamics and the role, and like there's so many variables. But
there's so many variables. And I've been hearing too that companies that have gone back to the office or that are requesting their employees go back, they're asking all kinds of requirements from them of, related to vaccine status, related to certain distance, social distancing, and wearing a mask. And that's really upsetting to some people too. Like, why are you asking me all these things? Like, I don't even want to
right,
come to the office. And then I have all these requirements on me. And there's really strange laws in every state, or it seems like every state differs in what those laws are. So if a company is based in California, for example, they may be enacting laws from California on all their employees, like wide with their employees, even though they're remote and in different places. And so that becomes tricky too. It's really
yeah,
fascinating time, right?
it is. It's very tricky. Yep, for sure.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to be work from home. I'm really glad to have my own business. And even though you're work from home, most likely in a remote, you're needing, because if you're recruiting company or the recruiting side of your company, you're needing to navigate all of these areas.
Oh, for sure.
and think
For sure.
about all of them when you're talking with
For sure.
candidates. Mhm.
Well, and you've got each company has their own dynamics. So you're trying to find people that fit within the culture and the parameters, not only the skill set and then the comp, and then you got to convince them to leave their job. And it's a lot, it's a lot going on.
For sure. And I
Yeah,
want to dive into some more personal questions related
sure.
to you and within your business, within Carbon 3 Recruiting or with the Wild Feather podcast. What do you feel like are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced or you've overcome related to being a founder or female founder?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm going to answer this in a couple of different ways. One is right now, the biggest challenge I face at this very moment is bandwidth. So business is fantastic. However, I need to hire people, but I don't have the time to even, I'm too busy recruiting for other companies to be able to recruit for my own, right? So I am just running myself silly and I am unable to get other things done from an operational standpoint. I would say that I need to get done, only because I'm really busy, but I'm not going to complain because I love it. However, you know, everyone will tell you as your business is growing and it's doing well, that's when you start delegating and keep building, keep the momentum going. So I think that's my biggest challenge currently. And with the Wild Feather, I don't really see any challenges with that, only because it's a passion project. If it were, I'm kind of letting the universe take control of that one and grow it as it shall and as it should. I have a big vision for it, and we're going to be launching a lot of affiliate marketing and a lot of programs that will be helping entrepreneurs from the ground level of like resources they need and that kind of thing. It's just a matter of time, same situation, bandwidth to be able to devote to that, uh, and hiring people to help me execute that. So those are probably my biggest challenges today, but I will say that I am previously a founder of a software company, of a startup that was a software mobile app company. And from a
Mhm.
founder, if you're asking me from a founder standpoint, I would say there were so many challenges and so many lessons learned. I made every mistake in the book. It was it was great though, because I learned so much. So if I were to start a company now, a software company, I would know what not to do and know what to do, right? Like it would
Exactly.
it
Mhm.
would totally mitigate that whole painful 2-3 years, and I could execute and get things done. So I've learned a few things along the way. And I would say with that, if anybody's wanting to start a company or in the midst of starting a company, I would say one is do your homework, do your research, network as much as possible, because I think my challenges were I just ran out of money. I wasn't a tech founder. You can probably appreciate this being a software developer background. I wasn't a tech founder, so having to put your baby and your ideas into somebody else's hands that
Mhm.
you don't know how to read code, so you have no idea what's getting done, and it costs an astronomical amount of money, and then
Mhm.
it gets built, and we weren't able to use it because it wasn't built to scale.
Mm.
So we had to start all over.
Mm.
And by that time, it was just exhausting. Right. And so I just needed to walk away and take a break from it. But I would say network and get people to just keep asking questions and keep asking for help, and don't just rely on the first couple of people that come
They want to
along that you get
help or
introduced with. Yeah. Right.
right
Right. And that are
or
willing to do it.
that are willing to do it that might be seeming like a good price. That's yeah, I've heard a lot of stories
Yeah.
related with
Yeah.
the build out of mobile apps and web apps. I mean, I've personally supported a lot of clients previously in building out mobile and web apps for them and the business side and digital marketing also and guiding them on that. And I've heard a lot of stories. I had one friend that was crying that I used to support men and women at some point when I first started Empire Life, and then I transitioned about 2018 of only supporting female founders, or at least 50% founded from a female identifying person. And so he had initially talked to Empire Life and he was like, this is my idea. I want to build out this kind of mobile app, and I spec'd it out. This is specs. This is what you can expect to pay to have this built out. And he's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I think I'm going to find a developer team in another country. Like, you do you. Just let me know if you have any questions. I understand. I'm here to support you if you need anything. And then a few years later, he still didn't have his mobile app complete and built out. And we met for lunch when he was in town, because he's my friend, and trying to network, like you said, always having, and you understand each other more when you've been through all those things as
Right.
founders. It's really nice to continue to have a network of founders, because there's a level of empathy or understanding that you just don't find in other businesses or other people. And he started crying and said he had spent close to $1 million over a few years of investor money, his own money, and he still didn't have a viable MVP or anything to work with. And he wished that he will have gone with my company, even though at the start it seemed more pricey than what he had been anticipating, that he didn't realize if he hired another team that there would be a back and forth and things that he didn't know for sure were getting done. And he would think that he was communicating with them properly, but then it wouldn't be done, or they wouldn't fully understand where it was coming from. Because there's also a level, I think, of knowing how it's going to be for the end user has to have some level of business experience too, and how you want to, the user friendliness or the end user product. It can't just be one side of, oh, well, that's the technology, and then we're going to build this out, and it's going to be, this is everything that you said you wanted. So not being able to bring up business related, our marketing, how the user might actually like this button over here, and a person who's only been on the software developer side have a more difficult time bringing those kind of questions up. And also, we just want to listen to the clients sometimes, or they're just listening to what the client says and trying to execute what the client is asking for. But that was a big difference. There has been a big difference with Empire Life, that I can bring those kind of things up of being on both sides, like from a business standpoint or marketing, or this just doesn't look right.
Right.
Like, this is not pretty, this is not user friendly. And maybe if we move things around it this way, or even being able to now be on projects where I can actually guide both sides, even, and say that I understand that that's what you want, or what can be version 1, or what does the MVP have to have? Because all of what you're talking about is like 5 years working with the developer team.
They want it now.
Yeah, I want it now. I wanted it like a month ago.
Right.
So that's the communication too, is being able to understand how long is this going to take from a developer side, and then the marketing side, is this a viable product for the marketplace, like you're talking about? Is this going to be user friendly? How can we gamify this? How can people keep coming back to it? Those are questions that sometimes get just kind of mulled over.
Right.
And steamrolling ahead. This is what I want. This is what I told the developers I want. Those questions need to be answered as well.
Yeah. Well, and developers aren't, especially consulting firms or the overseas situation. We tried that too. If you don't, if you're going to have a language barrier on top of not knowing code, like Yeah, they're just different ways around it. Like you can build an MVP without spending 100 grand and without going to a firm just to get an MVP. It may not be fully functioning, but it can be functioning enough to show in a presentation, right? In
Yes.
order to raise funding or to do
Mhm.
like get you to where you need to be and then finish it out. It doesn't have to be fully baked in order to get to that point, right? And so I think that um is a good lesson learned.
That's a great point and a common misconception.
Yep.
Oh, well, in the business world too, for business consulting, to think I have to have all my programs fully mapped
Right.
out
Just
and
start selling
yeah,
and
this is
then build
start.
it all. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just start
Mhm.
somewhere, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I think
And
that's a big deal in coaching. I feel like I hear it a lot
mhm.
in coaching programs and whatnot. It's like it doesn't have to be perfect, just start. Because if you don't start, then you're never gonna start, right?
Yes, another huge point of that or lesson that I've learned along the way, and also with guiding clients, I hear frequently is there's a point A, right? And that's the point where somebody starts from. They may have some experience and they get their online course out there, they start selling, and they're starting from point A. If they didn't start from point A, they would never get past point A. So no matter where they're coming from or their experience, they're still starting from that point. So a person who started sooner is going to get past point A sooner than
Right, right.
somebody who is saying, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for point A and going and beating around the bush, or I need this other certification, or I need to do this other thing. And I need more training. However, they're
Right. The best
spinning
training is
their.
just to dive in, isn't it?
Mhm.
That's the
Well,
way I
then
see
they
it.
keep learning lessons and they get there so much faster or further along the path because you learn lessons by doing it and by receiving that
Right.
feedback of, oh, I can improve this more the next time, or I need to add this into my contract because this is questionable, or I need to be more clear. I was having a conversation with a client this morning about being more clear in their contracts about the expectation of communication. And
Mm.
for example, that's something that a lot of business owners don't think about is when am I going to answer emails? How
Oh
am I
yeah,
going
yeah,
to
yeah.
make sure my clients feel supported within boundaries in a structure that is dedicated or designed, implemented from the beginning, saying I'm available from this time to this time. This is how long it takes me to get back to you. And these are the ways to communicate and contact me. And just laying out those expectations makes things flow much smoother and makes you love your life.
Right.
Be thinking, oh, this business is running me. Like you're the
Right.
one running the business.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So it,
Definitely good to think about and also to include, because you'll run yourself ragged if you don't.
yes, for sure. And what do you do, Brooke, when you start to feel some resistance in your business?
From I was like, from
From
who?
from
From
any
me? From the
from
universe?
yourself or from the universe in any kind of way.
From clients?
Like you're not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, or you're wondering.
Okay, so if from a personal standpoint, so I'll give you an example. It happened this morning. I was gonna go to the gym and I really didn't want to go. I wasn't feeling like going to the gym, so I was starting to make excuses. So my most recent thing of how I overcome resistance with myself is I just tell myself, "You're hurt. If you don't go, you're hurting yourself and nobody else. Like you're the only one that's going to um, not reap the benefits of this. So just do it because you'll feel better, right? Like you're only
Mhm.
hurting yourself." So that's one way recently that I've tried to overcome resistance too. If there's too much resistance, if it's not personally inflicted resistance, uh I usually like have to surrender and walk away, and I let things just kind of, either I walk away and regroup and think about different ways of approaching or how I'm going to handle it, or understand why someone's acting or reacting that way, so I can fully understand. I try very hard not to react, and if it's too much resistance, then I just surrender and let it all work itself out. Like, I'm not much of a person that tries to force a square peg in a round hole. I've just learned it doesn't, if it doesn't feel good and feel right, then I let it go.
Let it work itself out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I surrender it.
It
And
is. It's
I
very
have no
wise.
problem. I have no problem telling people, like, let's revisit this. Give me a couple days or take a few days to think about, because if there's two parties involved, but yeah, I mean, it always works itself out, right? I think it does. And it may not be the way you think it should, but it's the way there's always going to be something great that comes of it. My philosophy has always been plant seeds, just plant the seeds. And if you fertilize them a little bit along the way, just give them some love along the way, they'll eventually grow and be prosperous, right? And seeds grow at all different stages. Some take longer than others, but it's all going to work out. Like, everything's going to come to fruition if you believe it. And if you sincerely believe in yourself, right? I think, so I think with resistance, to answer your question, I surrender and let it go.
I love the way you think about that. Super wise. Something I like to tell myself, I have a lot of personal philosophies. One of them is, if it is yet to be worked out, it means it's still being worked out. So that allows me a lot of patience to pause or take a step back and realize it's not the end. It must still be in motion. And if it doesn't feel good yet, it will feel good, and it will work itself out. And I need to be patient, because it must still be in motion if it still feels out of alignment.
Right. And that just means you have an opportunity to learn something new or to work on something different that like, at the very moment, if something's not happening that you think should happen, switch gears, take your mind off of it. And that's my theory. And then it'll happen before your eyes. I mean, it's amazing, bigger and better than you ever dreamed it could be, right? So
That's true. When we give that
yeah.
space, that's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't come naturally for me to give that space. Yeah. It's definitely learned.
I don't think it comes naturally for a lot of people, and including myself. Like, I feel like I've had to learn it, and then there was a long process there of, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it, like obsessing about it. And I think now it's easier to not, but I feel like the whole resistance thing, the more obsessed we become with something, the more resistance we create to that. And so my theory, my personal experience has been, let go of the obsession, let go of it, like consuming your mind and your brain and whatnot, let it go, and it'll all work itself out faster than what you could imagine. But the more you focus and dwell on it, the more resistance you're creating. At least that's what I think.
Yes. And on that same note, Brooke, what are some of the tips or tactics that you do to free your brain from that, or to give yourself that space?
Yeah, so I meditate every day. I journal. I listen to music. Music's a big one. I'll go for walks in nature, although in the winter I'm in Michigan, so walks aren't that enjoyable right now. But I'll go skiing or something just to be outside and to free my brain. And, I hang out with my friends, go do something fun. I just try to remove myself from the environment that's making my head focus on that and just try to enjoy the moment or try to free it. I don't know how else to, but meditation helps immensely. So does, I really think, going to the gym or exercising. I know it's probably cliche, but it's amazing how that helps. Go sit in the sauna, detox.
Yes, I found that to be really true too in my business and personally, and also with our culture, both being from the US, it can feel counterintuitive to what we're seeing of like just put your nose to the ground and move
Right.
forward, push through, don't quit. And it's a reminder to the listeners, like you're not quitting to take a break. You're taking a break. You're allowing that space for it to flow, for more of the ideas to start flowing. As I know for myself, taking a shower sometimes, taking a walk, like you said, meditating, hanging out with close ones, loved ones, going to the gym. Those are times when the best ideas come to me. And all of a sudden I like, bingo, oh, that's the one. That's what I'm going to do now. Oh, I just solved that when I wasn't trying to. Right. Even though it's super counterintuitive. Okay. I think it's, for me anyway, I had to teach myself that that's okay to step away.
Yeah, for real, for sure. I always find travel too. I love to travel, and I always find travel to be very enlightening. Like, I don't know, maybe because you remove yourself from the everyday, and then it frees you to let answers come or clarity come. I don't know, but I always find that to be helpful too.
So flying is like that for me. I was fine going up in the air and this kind of get in a way, removing yourself from the situation. It's fully removing ourselves from our environment.
Right? That is for sure.
And I know we're coming up on time, Brooke. I was wondering, how can people get in touch with you for making sure that they get your services or your support?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to carbon3recruiting.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I always open and welcome connections on LinkedIn. You can reach me on Brooke Dunwell. You can also go to the Wild Feather podcast website. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, all the major ones. And you can email me. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, however you want to connect, and whichever one is your jam, we're there. One of the companies is there.
All the places.
Yeah, right.
That's great.
All the places, all the fun,
Perfect. Well, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Stay safe in that ice.